I never imagined I'd be writing this, but here we are. This is the story of how my own brother Bet divided me in the worst way possible, how he took my kindness for granted, humiliated me, and thought he could get away with it. But he was wrong, very, very wrong. Let me start from the beginning to my brother John and I had always had a complicated relationship. We were close as kids. But as we grew older, things changed. He became the golden child in our family, the one who could do no wrong. Our parents showered him with praise, excused his mistakes, and acted like he walked on water. Meanwhile, I was always the one who had to be responsible, who had to sacrifice, who had to understand whenever John did something selfish. But despite everything, I still loved him. I still wanted to be a good sibling, and that's why, when he announced he was getting married, I offered to help in a big way. John and his fiancée Sophia had their dream wedding, all planned out, but there was one problem: they couldn't afford it. The venue, the catering, the decorations, the dress, the flowers, it was all way out of their budget. I saw how stressed they were. And despite our rocky history, I wanted to do something nice, so I made them an offer. I told John I would cover the wedding expenses as my gift to them. Not a loan, not a split payment. I would pay for everything. It was a huge amount of money, but I figured, hey, it's my brother. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. If I could make him happy, why not? John was over the moon. Sophia cried. Tears of joy. My parents gushed about how generous I was. It felt good. It felt like for once I was truly appreciated. But then, everything changed. The wedding planning went on, and I started noticing something odd. Whenever I asked about my role in the wedding, I was given vague answers. At first, I thought maybe they were just busy, but as time went on, I started getting a bad feeling in my gut. Then, about a month before the wedding, I received a text from Sophia, not even a call, just a cold, emotionless text. Hey, just wanted to let you know that we've decided to keep the wedding small and intimate. I hope you understand. Thanks again for everything. I read the message 3 times, thinking I must have misunderstood. I wasn't invited to a wedding I was paying for. I immediately called John. He didn't answer, so I texted him asking what was going on. Hours passed before he finally responded. Look, we just don't think you fit the vibe of the wedding. It's nothing personal. Hope you're not mad. Not mad. I was fuming. My own brother had the audacity to take my money, plan his dream wedding, and then tell me I wasn't good enough to be there. I needed answers that I called our parents, expecting them to be outraged. But when my mom picked up, her response made my stomach drop. Oh, honey, just let it go. It's their special day. You don't want to make things awkward, do you? I couldn't believe it. They knew. They knew. And they didn't care. That's when I realized I was on my own. And that's when I decided if they wanted a wedding without me, well, they weren't going to have a wedding at all. I sat there, staring at my phone, my mind racing. I had spent months watching John and Sophia plan this wedding, offering advice. When asked, covering deposits and making sure everything was perfect for them. I had gone above and beyond to ensure they had the most magical day possible, and now, after all that, I wasn't even invited. Not only that, but the way they dismissed me, like I was some distant acquaintance instead of family, made my blood boil. I could have understood if there were budget restrictions or a venue capacity issue, but I was literally the one funding everything. There was no excuse. I needed time to process what had just happened. I put my phone down and sat in silence for a long time. At first, I felt hurt, crushed, even. But as the minutes ticked by, that sadness hardened into something else, something sharper. They thought they could use me. They thought they could get away with it. They were wrong. Do a T. That moment, I knew I wasn't going to let this slide, but I wasn't about to throw a tantrum or beg them to reconsider. No, That's exactly what they expected me to do. Instead, I was going to be smart about this. Started by gathering all the information I had, since I had paid for everything. I still had access to the contracts, the venue, the catering, the florist, the photographer. I had been the primary point of contact for most of these services, and since the payments had come from my account, that meant one very important thing: everything was still in my name. A slow, calculated PL started forming in my mind. The wedding was still a few weeks away. That meant I had time. Time to make sure that when the big day arrived, things wouldn't go exactly as John and Sophia had planned. But first I needed to do some digging. I started scrolling through social media, looking at their posts about the wedding. Sure enough, their small and intimate guest list wasn't so small after all. Dozens of people were commenting about how excited they were to attend friends, extended family members even. Co-workers to SOI didn't fit the vibe, but all these people, that was all the confirmation I needed. I took a deep breath, pulled up my emails, and started making a few phone calls. First on the list, the venue. I picked up the phone and dialed the venue's number. A polite woman answered. "Hello, this is Willowcrest Events. How can I assist you?" I kept my tone calm. "And professional, hi, I'm calling regarding the upcoming wedding for John and Sophia on the 17th. I'm actually the one who made the booking, and I need to discuss some changes." "Of course," she said. "What changes would you like to make?" I paused for a moment, letting the anticipation build in my own mind. "Actually, I'd like to cancel the booking entirely." There was a short silence before she responded. "Oh, I see. Just to confirm, you are the one who made the payment and signed the contract." "Correct. That's right. I said the contract is under my name, and since I won't be attending the wedding, I've decided to withdraw my support. I understand there's a cancellation fee, but that's fine." She hesitated. "Well, since you're the contract holder, you do have the right to cancel, however the deposit is non-refundable." "That's completely fine," I assured her. "Just go ahead and process the cancellation. Also, please make sure that any communication regarding this comes directly to me. I don't want anyone else making changes on my behalf." She agreed, and after a few minutes of confirmation, the venue was officially canceled. Point one down. I hung up the phone, already feeling a wave of satisfaction wash over me, but I wasn't done yet. Next up, the catering. John and Sophia had planned an extravagant menu, multiple courses, an open bar, and a beautiful cake. They had raved about it for months. But once again, I was the one who had paid for it. I called the catering company and repeated the same process. "Hello, I'm calling regarding an upcoming event. I booked for John and Sophia. Unfortunately, there's been a change of plans and I need to cancel the catering services." The woman on the other end asked if I was sure. "We're just a couple of weeks out, so there will be a cancellation fee. I understand." I cut in smoothly. "Go ahead and cancel. Everything after a few minutes." It was done. The caterers were no longer preparing anything for the wedding. Point two down. I smirked, but I wasn't finished. The florist, the photographer, the decorations. I went down the list, one by one, canceling everything. Each call felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity, like I was undoing every ounce of manipulation. John and Sophia had tried to pull on me by the time I was... He finished. The entire wedding had been reduced to nothing but an empty venue, one that they no longer even had access to. Now, all that was left was to sit back and wait. John and Sophia had no idea what was coming the days leading up to the fest. Wedding were eerily quiet. John and Sophia hadn't reached out to me at all, which told me one thing: they were completely unaware that their entire wedding had just been erased. I had to admit there was a small part of me that wondered when they would figure it out. The venue, the catering, the decorations. Surely someone had contacted them by now, right? But no, that I wasn't going to warn them. I wasn't going to give them a single hint. Instead, I waited then the night. Before the wedding, my phone ranged. It was my mother. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me that I answered with a casual, "Hey, Mom." The first thing I heard was chaos, shouting panicked voices. My mother's sharp, breathless tone. "What did you do?" I leaned back in my chair, a satisfied smirk creeping onto my face. "I don't know what you mean. Don't play dumb," she snapped. "John just called me. He went to check on the venue, and everything is gone. No decorations, no tables, no setup, nothing. The staff told him the booking was canceled." I feigned surprise. "Wow, that's weird. Maybe he should ask whoever actually planned the wedding." Silence. Then she spoke again, quieter this time. "You Cannell. Everything, didn't you?" I didn't even hesitate. Of course I did. I paid for it. It was in my name, and since I wasn't invited, I figured, why should I pay for something I'm not welcome at? There was a sharp inhale on the other. "And you ruined your brother's wedding?" "No," I corrected, my voice calm. "He ruined it. The moment he decided to cut me out after taking advantage of me, I just made sure he faced the consequences." Another voice broke through the chaos in the background. "John, he was yelling at someone. Furious. What do you mean? We have no food. The caterer canceled. What the hell is going on?" I could practically hear his world crumbling. I checked the time. The wedding was supposed to start in less than 12 hours. Guests would be arriving soon, expecting a lavish event, but they would be walking into nothing. I almost felt almost. I'm why Mother was still sputtering in disbelief. You really did this?" "Yes," I said simply, "and I don't regret." Hit it before she could say another word. I hung up now. All that. Who was left was to see how the disaster unfolded the morning of the wedding arrived, and I could already imagine the sheer panic unfolding at the venue. John and Sophia must have shown up expecting a picture-perfect setup, only to find a cold, empty space. No chairs, no flowers, no food, no music. Just an expensive hollow room with nothing inside. I poured myself a cup of coffee and scrolled through my phone, waiting, and then, like clockwork, the messages started pouring in. John texted, "What did you do? You ruined everything." "I hope you're happy." Sophia texted, "You are beyond selfish. You knew how important this day was for us." I took my time before responding, sipping my coffee as I typed back a single message. "I wasn't invited. Remember, didn't seem like you wanted my involvement, so I just followed your lead silence for a..." Well, at least then my phone rang. John thought I let it ring out. It rang again and again. Finally, after the fourth time I picked up, "Let me guess," I said. "Try something wrong with the wedding." His voice was shaking with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done? People are arriving in a few hours. There's nothing here. No food, no chairs, no flowers." "Oh, wow, that sounds terrible," I said, feigging concern. "Maybe you should ask the person who actually planned the wedding." "Oh, wait, that was me." He let out a sharp breath. "You did this on purpose." "Of course I did," I said. "You expected me to pay for everything, and then just accept being tossed aside like I was. Nothing. You used me, John, and you thought I'd just take it. I could hear Sophia's voice in the background, panicked, speaking to someone else. "Can we get another caterer? Anything?" The second voice answered. "Not at this. Notice everything's booked solid." I could practically hear the blood draining. From her face, John's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "Please, we can fix this. If we just get the venue back, maybe we can." I cut him off. The venue was my contract, remember? And they were fully booked for months. "So yeah, that's not happening." He let out a strained breath, and for the first time there was something in his voice that hadn't I been there before, panicked by. Let that silence linger, savoring the moment. Then, just as I was about to hang up, I gave him one final parting shot next time. Don't take advantage of people who actually care about you. And then I hung up. But the story wasn't over yet, because what happened next was even better. I sat back, my fingers still lingering on the phone. Screen. A feeling of satisfaction spreading through me for the first time in a long while. I felt like I had control of the situation. John and Sophia's little world was about to collapse, and I was going to watch it all unfold from the sidelines, knowing I'd played my part. But the real chaos started to hit as the morning wore on. I started receiving messages from friends and family members who had been invited to the wedding. Aunt Olivia, 8:05 a.m. What the hell is going on? I just got to the venue and it's like a ghost town. Uncle David, 8:02 a.m. Hey, we got here early for the wedding. There's no one here. Did they cancel what's going on? The more I read, the more the gravity of the situation hit me. It wasn't just John and Sophia who were affected. This was spiraling out of their control, and people were starting to talk that I had to admit. Part of me felt a little gleeful, but that feeling quickly shifted as I realized the scale of the disaster. All of their friends, their family, none of them had any idea that this was coming. I began to feel the slightest pang of guilt. These weren't just strangers, these were people I knew. People who had come from out of town. People who had taken time off work to celebrate the wedding. Sure, John and Sophia had treated me like a doormat. But was this really fair to the rest of the guests? Then again, I couldn't help but remember how they had treated me, how Sophia had laughed when I suggested I be part of the planning process, how John had made comments about me not fitting the vibe of the wedding. I deserved to feel this. I checked my phone again, and the messages kept coming in. Olivia texted, "They're trying to fix it. They said the caterers are on their way now, but the venue is still empty." "What's going on?" Uncle David texted. "Everyone is starting to leave. No one knows what's going." On that, I couldn't help it. I had to respond. I replied, "I heard the wedding was going great. Such a shame, but hey, I'm sure it'll work out. Maybe they'll find some food or a chair somewhere." It was petty, I knew, but it was so satisfying to watch the mess ripple through the family DPPY. Now I was starting to realize something. This wasn't just about getting back at John and Sophia. This was about something bigger, something that had been building for years. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much of my life I'd spent putting up with their selfishness. The more I thought about everything I had done for them, only for them to completely disregard me at the first opportunity. And now, they were reaping what they had sown. But the icing on the cake was still to come. The day dragged on. I kept checking my phone. Watching the disaster unfold from the comfort of my apartment, the messages kept coming in from family. And at first, they were all filled with confusion. But soon, the tone shifted. Aunt Olivia texted, "I'm hearing rumors that the wedding is officially canceled. No catering, no setup, everything just gone." Uncle David texted, "I think they've called off the whole thing. Everyone's heading home. This is crazy. Is this real?" I couldn't help but smile at how quickly things were unraveling. The idea of John and Sophia having to explain this to everyone, how it was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. And now it was a full-blown catastrophe. He was so satisfying. But as the day went on, something unexpected started happening. John and Sophia calls became more frequent, more frantic. At first, I ignored them, but then I saw the desperate text from Sophia. Sophia texted, "Please, just tell me you didn't cancel everything. I'll beg you. I'll do anything." Her tone was raw, pleading. She wasn't the smug, self-righteous Sophia I knew anymore. Now she was just someone desperate for help. But why should I give it to her? Why should I be the one to fix the mess that was entirely of their making? Still, I didn't answer immediately. I just let her stew in her panic. Then, about an hour later, John texted me. John texted, "We getting married at City Hall today. We need you to help with the venue and food. I'm sorry for everything I said. Please, you're the only one who can fix this." Now the irony wasn't lost on me. They literally fired me from the wedding weeks ago, and now they were begging me to clean up their mess. I could feel the tension building in my chest. Was I really going to just let them scramble around, realizing the full weight of their mistake? Or was it time for me to finally take the upper hand? I couldn't resist that, I replied. It's a bit too late for that. Don't you think maybe you should have treated me like family, instead of some second-rate guest you could toss aside? Silence in a response. And then just as I was about to close my phone, the call came in. Doc John's voice was quieter this time, almost defeated. Look, we're sorry. We're really sorry, but the venue won't let us rebook it, and there's no one else to turn to for the catering, please. Please help us. I could hear the panic in his voice. But there was something else, too. Something else was happening. Something I hadn't anticipated. They were desperate, but so was I. As I listened to John's shaky voice, I felt a tug of something unfamiliar. A sense of power here. He was pleading with me for help. After everything they'd put me through, after all the dismissive comments, the exclusion, the way they treated me as though I were invisible. Part of me wanted to hang up, walk away, and leave them to face the consequences of their actions. They deserved it, didn't they? They had been selfish, manipulative, and ungrateful. And now they were finally feeling the press. Sting of their own choices, but there was something else. Something darker that I couldn't ignore. I had always been the one to clean up the messes they made. Always the one who gave without getting anything back. I had spent years being the quiet one, the one who didn't rock the boat, who kept my feelings to myself. But this time I wasn't going to fix their mess. Not unless I got something in return, John, I said. Slowly, my voice measured cold. I'll help, but you're going to owe me big time, and I'm not talking about the money you promised me. There was a long pause. What? What do you mean? His voice was low, almost too afraid to ask. I mean, I said, letting the weight of my words settle, you're going to have to make things right. No more treating to me like a nobody. No more excluding me. No more pretending I'm not important to this family. You're going to owe me respect from now on, and you're going to make it clear to everyone that I'm not just the one you use when things go wrong. There was silence again. I could almost hear the wheels turning in John's head as if he were weighing the value of his pride against the very real situation he was in. Finally, he spoke. I can do that. I'll tell everyone. Just please help us. We need you. That was all I needed. The satisfaction of knowing they were cornered, that they had no choice but to admit they needed me. I'll get things together, I said, a sense of finality in my voice. But remember this moment, you don't get to treat people like trash and expect them to always pick up the pieces I hung up. Feeling a rush of satisfaction, the venue was ready to be set up again. But now there were terms, and the real payoff was going to come when I come in. You got to see the look on their faces when they realized what had truly happened. But as I prepared to head over, one final message came through. Sophia texted, "Please WEC be forever." Grateful. Please make this right that I paused before responding, taking a moment to savor the power I now had over them. I replied, "Yuke, be grateful when I say you will be. See you at City Hall." With that, I left my apartment ready to make my way to the wedding. The stage was set, and now it was time to the final act. But there was still one thing I hadn't expected. To how this would all end? When I arrived at City Hall, the atmosphere was far from what you'd expect for a wedding. There was a sense of awkwardness hanging in the air, as if everyone knew something wasn't right, but who couldn't quite put their finger on it. The small crowd gathered in the lobby looked uncomfortable, standing in clusters, whispering. Among themselves, John and Sophia were standing by the front desk, looking more like two people who had just been through a war than a couple about to get married. They saw me as soon as I entered their faces, lighting up in a mixture of relief and nervousness. "Thank you for coming," Sophia said, her voice shaky. We really appreciate it." She looked at me, almost pleading like I was some sort of savior. John, ever the prideful one, didn't say much. He just nodded his eyes, avoiding mine as if he couldn't quite bring himself to admit how badly they had messed up. I walked toward them, slowly taking in the tension that filled the room. There were no flowers, no grand decorations, just a sterile room with a few chairs and a judge standing at the front. It felt more like a courtroom than a wedding venue. I approached the small group of guests who had been invited. They all gave me tentative smiles, but no one was exactly thrilled to be there. Everyone had expected a wedding fit for a celebration, but instead they were left in an uncomfortable limbo, unsure of what was going on or why everything had been canceled. As I took my seat, I couldn't help but feel a little glee in the pit of my stomach. This was it. John and Sophia had built their whole day around their carefully crafted image of the perfect wedding, and now it was crumbling in front of them. The ceremony began. The judge went through the usual formalities, but no one was truly paying attention. Sophia kept glancing at me, hoping for some sign that everything was going to turn out okay. John, on the other hand, seemed to be stewing in his own frustration, no doubt cursing the day he had ever pushed me away. But then, just as the vows were being exchanged, something unexpected happened. The door to the room opened, and a familiar face stepped in. The catering manager from the venue where the original wedding was supposed to take place. Everyone turned to look, and for a brief moment, there was complete silence. John's face, Dr. Brain of color. Sophia's mouth went dry. "What are you doing here?" John asked, his voice cold. The catering manager walked to the front and handed Sophia a large envelope. "I think you'll want to see this," he said, his tone flat. Sophia tore open the envelope, her hands trembling as she pulled out the contents. Her face shifted from confusion to shock and then to rage. It was a cancellation notice, a legal document from the venue showing that their booking was in fact voided. The contract had been terminated due to unpaid fees, and a substantial fine had been added for the breach. The catering manager spoke up again. "You're lucky I came here to let you know. You should have paid attention to your obligations it was at." That moment, standing in front of a room full of people who had seen it all unravel, that Sophia finally broke. I thought we were going to get married today," she whispered. The realization sinking in, Doc John's face turned crimson. He stepped toward the catering manager, his anger flaring. "This is your fault. You were supposed to keep everything together." But the manager didn't flinch. "You should have been more responsible. But hey, I guess that's what happens when you treat people like disposable." I watched the scene unfold, feeling every ounce of satisfaction creep in. John and Sophia had been so sure of themselves, so sure that they could manipulate everything around them without consequence. And now here they were, with the walls closing in, their perfect day crumbling to dust. But the most satisfying part they had. No one to blame but themselves. As the catering manager walked out, I caught Sophia's eyes. There was a moment of quiet between us. She looked defeated, her smile gone, her confidence shattered for a second. I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered everything that had led up to this moment. And, oh, they didn't deserve my sympathy. They didn't deserve anything. The judge, sensing the tension, awkwardly cleared his throat and finished the ceremony as quickly as he could. No one clapped when they were declared married in quote. Fact, the guests filed out as soon as the words were spoken, leaving John and Sophia to face the consequences of their actions. I walked out of the room slowly, my heart pounding. The day had been a roller coaster of emotions, but in the end, I knew I had made the right choice. I had finally taken control of my own life and had made them pay for their disrespect. So I stepped outside. I couldn't help but smile to myself. It had been the perfect revenge. And as for John and Sophia, they would never forget the lesson they learned that day.